Well, the Big 12 got some good news from its old friend, AAC Commissioner Mike Aresco, in the aftermath of the Big 12 adding 4 new schools, 3 of which come from the AAC. We'll talk about that here in this video today. Please do subscribe if you have not. I talk college football every day on this channel. That means conference realignment right now every day on this channel. I aim to give the Big 12 a voice. The reporting here today comes from Heather Dinich of ESPN, and it surrounds the AAC and the exit fees and the timeline for when the Big 12 may be able to get the 3 schools out of the AAC and into the Big 12. Not going to be an issue with BYU. They're scheduled to join in 2023. That won't be any kind of real big deal for them, being an independent in football and just getting out of the WCC in everything else. Here's what we have. The AAC will be willing to negotiate a higher exit fee to accommodate early departures of UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston to the Big 12, Commissioner Mike Aresco told ESPN on Friday. So this story comes from last week. AAC bylaws require schools to give a 27-month notice before they leave and pay a $10 million buyout fee. If those 3 schools abided by the bylaws, Aresco said their exit date would be July 1st, 2024. Well, the conversations haven't happened yet. Aresco said he expects them to enter negotiations to adjust the exit fee. Quote, "We typically do because it's not a great situation when you know somebody's leaving. Often you can mitigate some of that just by getting a larger exit fee and having them leave earlier. We'll certainly be willing to negotiate that as we've done in the past and as other conferences have done in the past. I can't tell you precisely when yet at this point. Nobody's indicated what year." So, very reasonable take and reasonable stance there from Mike Aresco of the AAC. And of course, it goes back to the past history of the league. They let UConn get out early, over a year early, in fact, by paying $17 million instead of $10 million. So it did cost UConn getting close to twice what it would typically cost to leave. So it's not cheap, but they were able to do it for a pretty reasonable amount of money. And another thing I would add here is that these are pretty, again, reasonable remarks from Aresco, and he seems to have a good head on his shoulders about this. I can respect that, and I know here on this channel there has been some friction there, and it's again because of how everybody acts in realignment. You see your life flash before your eyes, so to speak, and somebody is threatening you, and there's going to be some tension there. And Aresco seemingly, to me, played along as a pawn in ESPN's scheme to try to, in the Big 12, to get out of $1 billion worth of TV contract money, right? There are going to be some hard feelings there. But the whole time, I have said, I do think Aresco is a good commissioner, and to me, this just reiterates that. He's definitely a savvy businessman. He understands what's going on, and obviously has just been fighting for his conference this whole time. As far as when some of these schools may be getting out, we do have a little bit of insight into, for instance, UCF and what their strategy is going to be. Their AD said the school is open to any options when it comes to trying to leave early. Says, quote, "We're going to look at where we are with our contract with the American, and all options are open right now." And if you go back to the UCF press conference the other day announcing that they were joining the Big 12, one of the first things that we heard is that athletics has opened up a new line of credit with the university to prepare for whatever it's going to take to get into the new league. And they also immediately launched a graphic about their campaign to have alums donate $12 per month for the Big 12 and the future of UCF athletics. So, look, I've talked about that on the channel already. UCF seems like they are ready to go. They're going to be aggressive, and they're going to make this happen. So I have no doubt that UCF is going to take care of things. Houston, that's, again, back to the Tillman Fertitta story. Fertitta is the chairman of the board at the University of Houston, and he reportedly saved Houston from being passed over by the Big 12 once again this past round of realignment by being so aggressive. So I can't imagine that a guy like him who owns the Houston Rockets, he paid over $2 billion to do so, would allow any kind of financial barrier to come in the way of Houston getting into the league as soon as possible. Frankly, just haven't heard as much on Cincinnati, don't really know the situation there as much, and hey, if anybody can help me out with that, certainly do in the comments or hit me up on Twitter at JLKurtz. But yeah, I doubt that finances are going to stop any of these teams from coming into the league by 2023. And I'd imagine that stays the date for everybody, not trying to move it up any earlier. I mean, the Big 12 stuck to 2023 with BYU. BYU just scheduled a game with Notre Dame for 2022. They have a lot of high-profile games on that schedule for next year. So, again, I'd imagine that's where we're headed here. And we're talking about all these schools really need to do is move that timeline up by about a year. It would be even less than what UConn's was technically when they negotiated out for $7 million. So if we're talking about the specifics of how much it may cost, you could make a case that it should cost less than what it did for UConn. The problem here is I think we all know the importance of these schools to the AAC and what they're actually doing to the league, really kneecapping it. So I would imagine I would imagine there's not going to be a lot of friendliness on that front when it comes to the actual nuts and bolts of the negotiation. But we shall see. The precedent, again, has been set. $7 million for over a year, expedited process to get out early. But there is some hope on that front if you put stock into the sentiment expressed by Aresco at the end of the article, and I understand why you would take it with a grain of salt, but it does say this. Aresco said he hopes UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston succeed in the Big 12, and that several people from those schools reached out, including an absolutely lovely message from Cincinnati coach Luke Fickell. Quote, "You just cannot take this personally," Aresco said. "It's not fun to go through, and no one's going to argue that you don't put on a happy face. But on the other hand, you have to. There's a human aspect to it. And these are all people who really did a nice job at the conference and were loyal members, and obviously they feel it's in their best interest to do what they're doing. You have to respect that and move on." So that seems encouraging, although, again, it's a different deal when you actually sit down at the negotiating table. Either way, none of this is my money. As somebody who's just a fan of the league and wants to see it come together as soon as possible, this is all good news. I think it's better for everybody to get this process expedited, get them in the league as soon as possible. If you have not subscribed yet, I would encourage you to please click subscribe. I talk college football every day on this channel. Right now, that means realignment every day on this channel. I try to give the Big 12 a voice. You can follow me on Twitter at JLKurtz if you want up-to-the-minute updates on what is going on, and you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at John Kurtz Show. I would really appreciate it if you did that as well. Take care, guys, and I will talk to you soon.